last night, Steph Curry, I mean, really all series long, he's been cooking. Clay really was cooking last night, but it was Curry winning the inaugural Magic Johnson Western Conference Finals MVP award, averaging nearly 47 DK fantasy points per game. That's all that matters, really, on the screen. Who cares about real points and rebounds and assists? Whatever. Give me all the DK fantasy points that you can stuff inside your lineup. DraftKings contributors Matt Meiselman and Jeff Pratt are here for a rock-solid NBA discussion. Jeff, you had Luka looking human, and then Clay coming to life last night. Like, what stood out to you the most in Golden State's win?
Yeah, this game really showcased the talent disparity between these two teams. It really did. Shout out to Spencer Dinwiddie for dropping 26. But besides him, no one really showed up to help Luka. And like you said, Emerson, Luka didn't even show up until the second half. And then on the other side, 6 guys scored in double figures for Golden State. Klay Thompson clearly took offense to me predicting another bad game for him. I said take the under on his points prop. I said fade him in DFS contests yesterday. He heard me, and he came out and he hit the over on his points prop in the first half. It was a meh performance from Steph Curry. Still ended up winning the Western Conference Finals MVP. I think it's only right that the second best point guard of all time wins the award that's named after the best point guard of all time, at least the first award. But when it doesn't matter that Steph didn't play that well, because when the Warriors offense is moving the ball like that, you can get away with it. Another thing that stood out is Draymond Green is already anticipating the Celtics. He said, I think in the postgame, we're playing Boston. We're playing Boston. So we'll see if the Celtics can get that done tonight. Great game from the Warriors. They're going to be tough to beat for whoever comes out of the East.
Okay, Maddie, so the Mavs have reached the playoffs, right? 3 years in a row. But the biggest question facing them at the moment is simple. What does the organization need to do to stand in the space that, like, the Warriors occupy right now, which is to reach the NBA Finals?
Man, I don't know. Well, yeah, I'm still having a hard time believing that the Warriors won this series so easily. Like Jeff said, the talent disparity is really big. Like, I still don't agree. But we're never going to get to find out because the series is now over and Golden State's roster is going to get healthier for the finals. Like, part of the reason I didn't like the Warriors in this series was because Peyton's injured, Porter's injured, Iguodala's injured. But from the Mavs side, like, they don't have the greatest roster right now. This was more, for me, it was more about the Warriors being overrated. So Dallas has a lot of ground to make up with these other elite teams in the West. Maybe the Suns just fall back. Maybe Chris Paul's not on the team next year. Maybe the Warriors are just a year older and they don't look as good and the competition is lighter and maybe that gets them over the top. But they're one great player away. I think over the last couple of years, they were hoping that would be Kristaps Porzingis. Clearly, he didn't stay healthy long enough for that to really be a realistic option. So I think they're just one really good scorer to complement Luka away from being a great team. I know they have Brunson, but I think they need a front court player. This is a pretty good team that just doesn't quite have it in the front court. And I don't know if there's a trade they can make or anything, but I don't think they're that far off. It's just they're pretty depleted in their forwards and centers. We see this with, Kevon Looney putting up like 15 rebounds, 18 rebounds, 20 rebounds. Clearly something is lacking there. So I guess it doesn't necessarily need to be an offensive player. You put Rudy Gobert on this team, I think they're a championship contender at that point, or maybe even the best team in the Western Conference. So maybe that's the guy. They just need one more piece somewhere.
Yeah, and a big question for him, too, is how much it's going to cost Dallas to bring back Brunson there. Warriors will await the winner. Jeff, you said it. Everyone knows it, of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Heat and the Celtics. So Boston has a chance to close it out. Game 6 at home tonight. They've been as much as like 9-point favorites, 8.5 right now on the DK Sportsbook. Do the C's cover this spread, Jeff?
At first, 8.5 points seems like a lot, but the Celtics have covered this spread pretty comfortably in all 3 of their wins in their series. It was 13 points last game, 20 points in game 4, 25 in game 2. Boston's the more talented team in this series. They're better offensively, defensively, they're healthier than Miami, and you can't ignore the fact that they are playing at home tonight in TD Garden. It's one of the best home court advantages in the league. As long as they don't turn the ball over like crazy, I think we've seen they can win and win comfortably. So I think they can cover the spread tonight.
Okay, Matt, the spread suggesting here Miami's just going to roll over and die. Like, do you see that happening?
I really am having a hard time with this game because it seems like the Celtics are healthier, I think it's very hard to predict the health of NBA players from day to day at this point in the season. Everyone's playing through something. And yes, I think more has been made of the Heat injuries, and rightfully so. Like Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry just have looked so bad. But Marcus Smart played less than half the game. He's questionable again. Robert Williams is questionable again. And we have to worry about Williams with the knee inflammation after every single game. I mean, hopefully they can win tonight and have 6 days off before the finals. Maybe he feels better after that much of a rest period. But it's not like the Celtics are 100% either. So I think it's a very unpredictable game. My hunch is that this line is too high and the Heat should be able to hang around and lose by somewhere between 5 and 10 points. So my lean is Miami on the spread, but I think there's just a lot of unpredictability here. So if the Celtics go out and win by 30, like that wouldn't shock me. But it's just, yeah, it feels like this line is a little too high. So my gut is to side with the Heat. I do think the Celtics win. Like I'm not picking an upset here, but I think that the Celtics are getting just a tiny bit too much respect for this game.
Okay, and then Maddie, the totals in this series, they just keep falling. And I feel as though we may have hit the floor tonight. 201 for game 6. Which way are you leaning? Now 201 and a half, actually.
So on Monday before game 4, I was on the under, and that line was 207 and a half. And the reason I liked it was because that was the first game that we were expecting Tyler Hero not to play. And to me, that's the whole thing. Like, sure, there's been some low scoring starts to games where Hero wouldn't have even been anyway. But over the course of a whole basketball game, the impact that Hero has on a total is massive because he is by far the worst defensive player on the Miami Heat roster. And especially now with how banged up their starting guards are, having Hero's offense there actually could be a pretty big boost. So I think that this is a low enough total where even if Hero's out, I don't really want to bet the under. Like we're down to close to 200 points. I think you just leave it alone there. But if Tyler Hero plays, I actually really like the over. This series has had totals between 205 and 210 for a few of the games. And I think that's correct if Hero is playing. So that's the news I'm watching for. I think it's going to kind of fly under the radar. He's probably the one Miami player who's a real questionable. You know, they list everyone questionable. Mm-hmm. Most of it is just nonsense. But Hero, I think, really is like a 50-50 call. So if he winds up playing, I actually like the over for this game.
Jeff, we're not expecting fireworks, slow pace, defense first, but this total's meager enough that like anything beyond Miami's pathetic last 2 efforts should be able to push an over.
Yeah, are we sure this isn't a game total from a Celtics Heat matchup in the 80s?
Yeah.
Because it feels like it. And to quickly touch on Tyler Hero, he better play. Because if he shows up in an all-white outfit with the shades and is flexing on the sidelines again, Heat fans are going to lose their minds, especially when you have Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler going out there who are clearly at like 40%. Neither one of them has any lift on their shot. And Hero's just on the sideline lying on the floor. You know, it's something. And the crazy thing is, I'm actually leaning towards the under in this one with all these guys banged up. I know it's crazy, but with all these guys banged up, I'm not sure how the Heat reach 100 points, even if Tyler Hero suits up, because I don't think he's close to 100%. He would have played in one of these last 2 games if he was even close. They haven't come close to getting 100 in 2 straight games. It feels like this is trending towards a similar result in tonight's matchup. They had 80 last game, 83 the other game, something like that. They're not even coming close to 100 points here, and it's not like Boston's blowing you out of the water the other way. So I'd probably lean towards staying away from this completely, like Matt said.
Yeah.
But if I have to pick, I'm taking the under.
Oh my God, you brave man, you. Let's move on to DFS here, guys. We have a showdown for tonight in the DK lobby. So who's your captain here, Jeff? So who are you spending 1.5 times the salary on, but you're also going to receive 1.5 times the points in return?
I'm staying away from all the studs in this matchup and picking a player who I think is wildly underpriced, which is Derek White at just 8,100. He's been absolutely phenomenal in the last 2 games, really harnessing the new dad energy ever since the birth of his son. Congrats to him. He's at 39 and 27.25 DK fantasy points respectively. Boston is relying on him more to lessen Marcus Smart's load. I expect that to happen again tonight. Like Matt said earlier, Smart only played around half of the game last time. I think we're going to see a similar output from him tonight. He's cheaper than Max Strus, who has shot a combined 0 for 18 over the last 2 games. He's also cheaper than Kyle Lowry, who can barely move out there, and he scored negative fantasy points in 25 minutes last game. This is a phenomenal opportunity to pay up for White and save to pay up at other positions.
All right, what do you think here, Matty?
So I guess like the homer in me wants to just say pick all the Celtics studs, and maybe in cash games that's the way to go. I think Derek White is a fine choice. I think Tatum and Brown are obvious choices, but in GPPs, I don't know that anyone wants to play Jimmy Butler at captain tonight.
No.
Kyle Lowry, to a larger extent, I think he's damaged enough right now. You just don't do that despite how contrarian it is. But Butler, I think, is kind of in that sweet spot where like he could be 3% owned in the captain slot just because of how bad he's looked the last couple of games. And if he comes out and is kind of normal, I mean, he's a decent amount cheaper than Tatum. So I think most people are going to set up lineups for this game where they sort of anticipate a Celtics blowout. Maybe you play like Bam Adebayo and, I don't know, Gabe Vincent and 4 Celtics or even 5 Celtics. I think that's going to be the common lineup. So to throw Butler at captain, it might be the first time this series where that's a legitimately contrarian move. The larger the tournament you're in, the better it is for this strategy because it definitely comes with a lot of risk. And if the Celtics go up big early, like this move has no chance of winning. But in a close game, I could see Butler kind of having something of a resurgence. I don't think it's likely, but I think if it does work out, it has the potential to pay off really big.
Yeah, even though he's clearly banged up after that knee injury, Miami's going to give him the ball, and they're just going to let him run the offense, and I don't think there's any question about that. Okay, so let's go value if you are going to pay up for captain, Matt.
Yep. So it doesn't – I don't think this works to play both of these picks, like Butler with a guy I'm going to say here in the same lineup. But if you don't want to do the Butler thing, I think if Hero plays – to Jeff's point, like just looking at him, he just seems so disinterested, or at least interested in something else. He doesn't look like he wants to play basketball right now. But he could wind up being the healthiest main guard on the roster tonight, just having had, 4 or 5 days off at this point. So this is there's a lot of contingencies here. We don't even know if he's playing yet. But Tyler Hero's only 6K. And if we think that Butler and Lowry are limited still, the extra usage has to go somewhere. Like if those guys aren't going to take their normal amounts of shots, it could be Gabe Vincent, but I think a lot of people will play Gabe Vincent. So that's my concern there. So maybe it's Hero and maybe it's also Duncan Robinson. We'll see if he gets back out on the court. But Hero's really the guy that I think is the pivotal concern for me for this game, for betting, for DFS. I think it's a big deal whether or not he plays.
Okay, Jeff, what would you do here in the value department?
Yeah, I'm rolling with the other Miami sharpshooter who's quietly been finding his shot lately, and that's Duncan Robinson, as Matt mentioned late into his pick. He's had 25 and 21 DK fantasy points in his last 2 games. He's going to continue to see an extended workload with Strus, Lowry, and Hero so banged up. And the other thing is, I think we've seen more Duncan Robinson layups in this series than ever in his career, and that's because Boston is doing such a good job running him off the 3-point line and making him uncomfortable. In the long run, these easy Duncan layups don't do anything for the Heat, but they do plenty for his fantasy production. So at 3K, I feel like this is a phenomenal value option considering how many Heat players are banged up and how much I expect him to play.
All right. Jeff, your gut's telling you this thing's over tonight?
Yeah. I'll be in the building tonight, so it's over.
Okay, well, make sure you text Julian Edlow because I think he's going to be in the building too, and he gets very salty when he finds out you're in the building and you haven't tried to contact him. Matty, this thing's over tonight, right?
I don't want to jinx it because there's a lot at stake for me, but I really think so, and this is pretty cool. I'm happy we're in this spot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the Celtics close it out.